We're at the 1867 Sports Show, episode number Rosie McLennan tonight. Al
Wow.
Skinner, do you know why episode number 30 is the Rosie McLennan episode?
Like was that her little like pinned on number or something when she was competing at the Olympics? What's
No,
the tie into 30 there?
the 30th Olympiad just so happened to take place in 2012 in London, and Rosie McLennan was the sole gold medal winner for Team Canada's Summer Olympic team. So, hence why we are on episode Rosie McLennan tonight. You see that? You see
Stuck
how
on
that ties
that
in together?
Elias Sports and Information Bureau. Kyle Kirkwood's the one that's deep diving into these
Woo!
sports facts there.
No, I like I said, I was looking into it because I know that we were going to be, pretty Olympic heavy tonight. So I'm like, how can I tie in the episode number to an athlete that's participated in the Olympics? And it's that what Olympic are we on right now? Because I think it was like 32 or 33, and I was like, okay, well, let's see what Canada's Olympic team did at the 30th Olympiad, and lo and behold, ended up being pretty easy with Rosie McLennan being the only gold medal winner from that time. So. Oh, good. How you doing, man?
Good, good. What was her event? Was she trampoline?
Trampoline. Yeah,
I
trampoline.
did remember it. There we go. Well, you
Yeah.
know what? I'm doing pretty good, and also friend of the show, Kevin Kelly, is doing pretty well as well because our little ones have now officially wrapped up their
Hey.
2024 softball season. Kevin can stop dodging line drives coming right back at him as the coach trying to pitch it into these little 8-year-olds there. But speaking of medals, hey, bronze medal out of the entire league. So we avoided the dreaded participation trophy or anything like that. So
Well
kudos to
done.
the kids.
Well done. You're actually earning your hardware. So that's good.
Yeah.
The kids are learning a thing or two about working hard, and as we can kind of tie it back to last week's episode with Ken MacKenzie, the compete,
Yeah.
right? The compete.
Absolutely. Had to have a conversation with my eldest daughter, Haley, because they do the little ceremony, so they win their last game. Obviously, lost the semifinals, so then they won the bronze medal game. So they get all their little third place medals up and down the lineup, and then she looks over, and the other team is getting, I don't even know what color medals were going around those kids next. There's hey. What's this about over here? You said that they only gave medals for 1, 2, and 3. Like, all right, this is an in the car conversation. I'm not dealing with those parents there, but yeah. So she learned all about the theory of participation ribbons and trophies and all of that at age 8. So she's acutely aware of what's going on now.
There you go. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, she can look down at the bronze around her neck fondly and just remember the good times of lashing Mr. Kelly with softballs all season. So it was great. I remember when obviously I took my youngest out to go see you guys play a couple weeks ago, and he had a couple rattle off the shins, I think one in the gut, and that's the beauty of youth softball. You can't control where the ball's coming off the bat.
Yeah. But speaking of medals, little event going on right now, Summer Olympics, and Canada off to a better start than the aforementioned 2012 Olympics. But if you look up and down the medal standings there, the women are doing their part. Need the lads to pull up their socks here, though, and start chipping in.
This is a recurring theme with Canadian Olympics. It's always the female participants for Canada that seem to do just absolutely astounding.
Yeah.
And then you look at the men's side, and it's like, all right, you got some people who are competing, but they're not exactly in medal contention, right? Like they're 5th or 6th, whatever it may be. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think as a collective effort, you look at kind of where they stand right now, and they're doing fairly well, and I think they've upset a few they've come away with a few upset medals in some events that we didn't even plan on medaling in, referring to obviously women's rugby, which was fantastic. Seeing them upset not only France but Australia on back-to-back days. So I mean, let's get a golf clap for the Canadian women's sevens program, because anyone who's not familiar with kind of where they were 4 years ago was not good. Was not a good scenario for that program, and to see where they are now, competing really well with the world's elite. I mean, phenomenal for that program to be where it's at right now.
Yeah, absolute giant killers there. But for those who might not have even tuned into any of that, the one thing that stuck out to me the most was the fact that these games are happening like two in one day, right? Like it's not a ton of rest that they're getting between them. And part of me is like, you know what? That's probably how their tournaments are generally scheduled because don't know about you, not a big rugby sevens aficionado over here. So maybe it's par for the course. But I would assume on like the biggest stage of them all for the Olympic Games, like
Face
what's
note of
the
it.
rush? It's
Yeah.
still going on for another couple weeks. Like, could we not have just made them on, even if it's just back-to-back days, but
Yeah.
having multiple events in one day? Hats off to those ladies because I know a lot of their male counterparts who would have been just absolutely keeled over after one game, let alone, all right, now we get to take on New Zealand. Sweet.
Yeah, I was actually making that comment watching the gold medal game too, and I was like, didn't they just play like 17 hours ago, and they're already back on the pitch playing against the world's number one seed in New Zealand? So I mean, yeah, I mean, big big props to every single participant with the women's rugby sevens for not only Canada but for all the countries combined, because like for those who don't know how physical rugby is, just watch a game.
Yeah.
And then think about how much, one, they run, and then two, how much they're tackling, and three, just how physically exerting it is to not only combine those two things, but do it at an elite level.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that
You would have just loved to have been like, yeah, you know what? Screw the helmets and shoulder pads there. I'm gonna do football without that, and then I'm gonna do it all again tomorrow, 18 times. Here we go.
And again, like, I'm talking from experience of playing football. Like, there is no way that I would be able to actually play a full length football game back to back days. It's not doable. So the fact that they're doing it 3 days in a row and they're playing at a very, very high level. I mean, yeah, can't stress enough how many props that we have to give to all the women competing in that rugby tournament, because yeah, it's been phenomenal. That's actually been my favorite part of the Olympics so far, is watching those games because they're super exciting.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of new fans being kind of won along the way here as well. And people who might not have ever seen a rugby game, whether it's, kind of union or, sevens or any of those other kind of formats. It's not exactly, it's kind of a niche sport, I would say, at least in North America, right? Obviously in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
completely different kettle of fish. But yeah, it's exciting and it's something you can kind of plan your day around too, because this is the length of the game and it's humming. There's no commercial breaks. There's no ice girls that need to come out and scrape the goalie crease or anything like that. Like it's fast and furious and off to the
Yeah,
races.
yeah. And I mean, kind of transitioning away with it, you talk about off to the races. I mean, you're looking at kind of where Canada sits right now from the medal perspective, or even competing in the final races and whatnot. We're seeing a trend with kind of where Canadian athletes are, really progressing, because you mentioned before the vast majority of the medal contenders right now are on the women's side, and the vast majority of those women are on the young side too, right? Like,
Mhm.
you're seeing a lot of competitors from as young as 17 to 21, and they're representing, this country in every event. So, I mean, I don't know what happened, but we've got just a litany of terrific athletes in every single sport that's being represented in that age demographic right now. And it's so great to see, because, I mean, you're seeing the Canadian men's basketball program doing extremely well. Obviously, they're kind of running the show in Group A. Again, the Group of Death looks pretty good right now for them to kind of run the table. You're looking at other things like the swimming events. Obviously, they're doing very, very well on both sides thus far. Volleyball, I know that they had a little setback in Slovenia, but I think they rebounded pretty well in their comeback game. I forget where they were playing today, but it looks pretty good there. And yeah, obviously, first ever Olympic medal in fencing,
Yep.
which anyone who doesn't watch that sport, that's pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's there's I guess three different styles of it too, where there's like saber, there's épée, and I can't remember, foil might be the third one or something like that there. But watching the differences between, okay, I'm going for the little tap on the arm to score the points versus saber, which is just like, picture your swashbuckling pirates like, ha, ha, ha. Right? Like, so it's again, some of these things, and you even look at social media too, with what some of the athletes who are over there whose events either are done or haven't started yet. They've got to kill time, right? So they're checking things out. And, you got Anthony Edwards watching ping pong. You got
Mhm.
Scotty Scheffler's watching Simone Biles. So just even seeing everyone kind of getting out of their comfort zone and checking in on some of these things that you don't see on TV all the time. Like for a lot of
Yeah,
these events, you see it once every 4 years, and that's probably
that's
it,
it.
unless you've got, ESPN 8 The Ocho or something showing some of these things.
You're getting the cheese rolling down the hill. It's going to be an Olympic event next. They got breakdancing this year, and we're going to get cheese rolling next year, next Olympics.
Yeah, start training squirrels to go behind the little remote control speedboat there.
Yeah, yeah. But anyways, the reason I brought up the age demographic of kind of that 17 to 21 range, because I don't know if anybody's been watching the swimming, but again, you pretty much called it when we were talking about the Olympic preview. Summer McIntosh has come out of the gate flying for Team Canada in every single event that she's participated in, and yeah, the last race that she had with the individual medley was just an absolute clinic that she put on. What was it, 5 seconds that she won by?
She won by something like 8 meters, right?
Yeah,
So like it's just, again, her and kind of Ledecky on the American side.
yeah.
But once you get in there, you're pretty much swimming for silver, right? When you're against these two. And so for her to put on, the kind of clinic that she is and living up to every bit of that billing at such a young age, like, this is someone, get used to hearing that name for the next decade, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, several Olympics are going to be coming up, and when all is said and done, like, we're going to have to see if we're still recording this, 12 years down the line here, but I think she's going to
God,
be
I hope not.
someone buy us out, please, before 12 years
Yeah.
go by. But she's going to be the Michael Phelps of Canadian swimming, is essentially what it's going to be. She's going to need expansions on her trophy case, and she'll be a household name, very much the same way that, he was splashed on Wheaties boxes and had a lifetime Speedo endorsement deal and all these things because of how dominant he was. And, I think it's something that we were trying to figure out who's going to be the opening flag bearer. We already know, like, if it's not Summer McIntosh, something has gone horrifically wrong over in Paris, because she is going to be bringing that Canadian flag in for the closing ceremonies, and we'll see what kind of happens from there. But yeah, kudos to her. Golf clap to Summer.
Yeah,
Summer
yeah,
of
and
Summer.
the summer of summer, and it's even more impressive because she had a pretty lingering shadow cast over her coming into these games, with Penny Alexiak still being a very prominent member of the Olympic community.
Mhm.
And again, she hasn't really competed in any of her events that she specializes in yet, other than the relay. But the fact that Summer McIntosh is getting out to this fast start and really kind of putting her name on the map, this is something that's just so great to see. And I mean, you mentioned comparing her to Michael Phelps, and I mean, you could easily compare her to Penny Alexiak, because you look at all the all the hardware that that young woman's taken home over the last two Olympics. She's on her way to becoming the most dominant swimmer in Canadian history, only to have someone what, 7 years her junior,
Mhm.
um, who's honestly ready to take up the next mantle. So
And I
the
love how we
fact
say like 7 years her junior, as though she's some washed up towards the end of her
she's
career
24,
athlete, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
she's 24 years old. So I mean, that's the crazy part about it, is that you see these Olympics and it's really becoming you know something of a young person's game, because I mean, I was laughing. I forget what sport it was or what event it was, but it's like, oh yeah, this is the dinosaur of the group. They're 29 years old. I'm like, the dinosaur of the group.
I beg your pardon. Like,
So
it's like, all those memes that are constantly going on there. It'll be like George Costanza with chips all over him, and it's like,
yeah,
elite athlete barely stumbles. Me,
yeah,
pathetic,
pathetic.
right?
Yeah, yeah, and but again, like, the fact that we're seeing, this type of attention drawn to a specific sport that Canada is excelling in is really great, because obviously there's been a lot of negative stuff
Yeah.
leading up to this Olympics with a few different sports. But yeah, seeing, where Canada is right now as a whole just kind of gives a lot of people hope that, this is a group that's really going to stay together for a while in all these different categories and really compete at the highest level for years to come. Because, you know, long gone are the days of the 1976 Olympics in Montreal when they won one medal the whole time when they were hosting it. Like that's an embarrassment, right?
Mhm.
You want to see the country that you're sending, or you want to see the athletes that are representing the country that you're from, do extremely well over.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we've talked about a few sports already, and I mean, I think there's one that we haven't mentioned that kind of has a lot of scrutiny over top of it, and also was thrilling to
Over
watch.
top of it, yeah, yeah, over top of it for sure.
Yeah, I like to tie that in there, but yeah, I mean, women's soccer program for anyone who didn't tune into their TV over the last week. Maybe you can give a little bit of a breakdown as to what happened and kind of where we are today.
Well, the burning question is, for a federation as cash strapped as Canada Soccer is, where are we getting the budget for all of these dreams? Right? Like, that's question number one. But
Yeah,
for those who have been living under a rock, because quite literally, doesn't matter if you're going on tsn.ca, picking up a newspaper, turning on a TV,
it's world news.
it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
You know, let's call it what it is here, right? To assume that, oh, Priestman had no knowledge this was a rogue staffer, right? Like, okay, I've got some magic beans to sell you here as well too.
Yeah.
So long and short of it, that Canada gets caught with drones filming New Zealand's practice, which, if of any
Of
sport,
any team.
yeah, of any team and of any sport, like, what do you really gain from watching other teams practices in soccer? Because even for
Yeah.
those who have been in, high level soccer practices, like, it's a lot of drills. Like, there's not a lot of like team concepts that, you're going to be picking up on and be like, oh, this is the formation they're going to run on the power play, or like, oh, so and so is at the point here. And, like, it's soccer. Like, most of the goals are due to mental error or a system collapsing, and it leads to an odd man rush, or just a perfectly placed ball. So what they were trying to get from it, I have no idea. But anyways, they obviously get caught, and it makes national headlines. Now, they kind of do a little song and dance as far as like, shame on you, but we'll hold off on any penalties or anything. They go out there, they play their first game. Okay,
Yeah.
well, maybe it'll just be an after the Olympics thing. And then suddenly FIFA comes in, which, for those who are following,
Why are you involved, FIFA? Get out of here.
the irony that FIFA is going to try and take the moral high
The
ground
holier
on
than now
anything
group.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Laughable to start with. But in comes FIFA and says, no, no, no. 6-point deduction for you guys in the group stage. Now, again, for those that don't know, 3 games in the group stage. Each win is worth 3 points. So it's essentially saying you guys are 0-2. You got to win out, which they have done. So
Yep.
kudos to the ladies going out there and in dramatic fashion in their last one, pulling it out. And so they actually have a chance, regardless of this sanction, to actually still move on from their group if they win their next game against Colombia and then certain things happen, right? So
Yeah.
it's not the ultimate kiss of death, but FIFA tried to make it the kiss of death
Yeah.
and say, like, all right, we're going to make it essentially impossible for you to move on here. So a couple days go by from that as well too, and suddenly now the Canadian Olympic Committee has lobbied an appeal. It's being reviewed as we speak. There's supposed to be a ruling before their game against Colombia, and we'll see how that ultimately plays out.
I'm sure it'll come to a decision very quickly, as we've seen with these international decisions. And I'm sure that they will absolutely consider all of the facts on both sides.
Yeah.
There's no bias here whatsoever. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, to your point, one, for the people who are involved in it, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Because even the players are coming out being like, it doesn't help us at all.
Yeah.
So, like,
You and I aren't exactly the most brilliant soccer tacticians out there. And even you and I quickly picked up on it doesn't seem like you would be getting a whole lot from that.
but like that's the thing. What are you doing? And I mean, some people just kind of overthink things and they take the new analytical approach to these, different formations and tactical formations and whatnot to a whole different level. And you don't need to do it that way. If you don't know how to coach your sport, you shouldn't be coaching your team.
Mhm.
So, unless you know that one, there's absolutely no film on the team that you're playing, which in today's day and age, if there's no film on the teams that you are playing, go get a go get a contract with either Dine Sports or one of the groups out there that I'm signing up for another job here
There we
that
go.
can go that
Drone
can
operator.
but I mean, this is part of playing at a high level.
Yeah.
Film exchange is something you have to do. It's required.
Yeah.
So if you're not getting enough film, that's your fault. You're not doing your job well enough that you can go out and scout and coach your team to, again, handle the opposing tactics.
These
So
are international qualifying tournaments that take place.
yeah,
There's film on everything. This isn't, the brick minor hockey tournament out west there, and there's some Russian team from,
yeah.
Omsk, Russia. I was like, I don't know what the hell they're doing. I've never seen them play before, right? Like,
But buy a subscription to Sky Sports and you will literally see half of these games.
yeah.
So yeah, like, again, I don't understand the people who were involved in it because it's just stupid. Like that's just stupidity. That's not saying we were lazy and got caught. No, you're just idiots and you don't understand how things work. And then two, the fact that the players get kind of burdened with all this thing, right? It's kind of like when you look at an NCAA program,
Mhm.
right? Who gets sanctioned. The players who are involved, the coaches who are involved in that sanction, they're not even around after 4 years to, handle the sanctions.
Yeah.
They're all new players, new coaches. It's the same thing. Like, why are the players being penalized because some idiot coaches and staffers decided, hey, we got this fancy new drone that we got for Team Canada. Let's go fly it over the stadium. I wonder who's playing there. Oh, it's New Zealand. Oh, cool. They won't mind that we're there. They're pretty neutral. So yeah, I mean that just kind of made that last victory over France that much sweeter. One, the fact that they had all this stuff that was known at that point, what the sanctions were, knowing they had to come out and win. So, anyways, I mean, it just comes down to all those things put together just made that victory that much more sweet when you look at how Canada came back to win that game. They got down early, knowing they had to come back to win, right? They come out in the second half, they tie it up, and then I think it was in the 13th minute of extra time, they score the winning goal. And I mean, I don't know if you watched the game, but the referee seemed to be holding that whistle for a long time, waiting for France to get back into it. It's like, oh yeah, there's an extra 2 minutes, and Canada, but they can only hold on for 2 minutes, and it's like the 2 minutes lasted for 30.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why the referee would not blow the whistle because France was not advancing at all. But anyways, the fortitude that that program showed was just phenomenal. And I mean, we're talking about the Canadian women's rugby team. There's a lesson that can be taken from this Canadian women's soccer team that anyone who watched that game can take. Like, there is no quit to that team.
Mhm.
With all the things that were coming down against them, they stepped up, they looked at each other in the eyes, and they said, we're not going to lose today. We're going to see this thing through, and we're going to control our own destiny. So again, let's get a golf clap for the Canadian women's soccer team because man, that was such a sweet victory when you consider all the things thrown in.
Yeah, well, absolutely too, right? Like you look at how easy it would have been for that team to have just folded after that ruling came out, and it was like, well, we're not even going to advance. Like, why bother, right? Like, soccer is a game where there's a lot of ties, and a single tie could have ultimately doomed this team. A loss essentially eliminates them, right? So it was an absolute gut check moment. And, kind of circling back to the appeal, what I like about the appeal is they're not appealing the fact that,
It
Priestman
happened.
and the
Yeah.
staffers who got sent home got suspended. They're like, we're distancing ourselves from them. Like Herdman, Priestman, anyone who was involved with this, like, you might be working with another federation, but it won't be, Canada Soccer anytime soon, right? But it's strictly on the points as far as why are you penalizing the players when everyone's saying like we never even saw the footage, right?
Yeah.
You've got Didier Drogba getting interviewed afterwards as well too, bursting out laughing, being like, this happens at high school levels of soccer in France. Like I don't know why this is even a thing, right? So you look at all of that, but then we know how these things kind of play out. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, Canada, you guys are just going to take, your medicine and whatever we dole out. You should be so honored to be participating. The
Yeah.
hell with the fact that you're the reigning Olympic champions, anyways, right? But could you imagine if USA or France had have gotten caught doing this? It would
Yeah.
have, I guarantee you, maybe there would have been sanctions, right? Maybe they would have gotten from the world FIFA rankings deducted some points.
But
All of
not
it would have been
until.
after the tournament. And you and I
Yeah.
both know that.
Yeah.
And we don't watch a ton of soccer, but I'll tell you that for free that
Yeah.
that is absolutely how that case would have played out.
It's kind of reminiscent of the 1988 Olympics when a certain Canadian sprinter won the gold medal, and all of a sudden, oh, he's on steroids. We're going to strip him of his gold medal. Guess what, everybody? Everyone else in the Olympics tested positive for steroids that year, and no one else got their medal stripped.
Yeah.
And the only sample that was taken and tested was Ben Johnson. So, yeah, like let's take it for what it is. Like, we're not conspiracy theorists here, but we're realists.
Yeah.
If it's someone who's an international power, not to say that Canada isn't in soccer, because again, they're reigning Olympic champions, but yeah, you look at France, England, the US, like Brazil, Italy, like any of these programs get caught doing these things during an Olympic or international event,
It's a
they're
fine.
not, yeah, it's a fine, and they're not talking about it until after the games are done. So yeah, I mean, that just kind of makes it that much better that the team is rallying around this whole thing and saying, okay, well, us against the world, let's make it happen here. So keep her going, ladies.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll maybe put a bow on the first couple of days of the Olympics here just with this. Putting aside the games themselves, right? Another largely talked about aspect, the opening ceremonies. What were your thoughts? What your artistic impressions of what you saw during the opening ceremonies?
Buddy, I turned it off as soon as they introduced Canada.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't for the life of me understand where they were going with it. It just seemed like they were like, oh wait, the Olympics are tomorrow. We got to really storyboard this whole thing. All right, just get Zinedine Zidane to bring this trophy into the subway, and then some kids will take it, and they'll get abducted by a boat.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Like
It's like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where it's like these aren't even paid actors. These are all just improv troupe people.
They're doing
that are
it for the
for the
experience.
experience.
Yeah, and you know, I I wish I could try and figure out where they were going with it. Like, I think they were doing like what Phantom of the Opera type theme and like the French Revolution and everything like that.
The
But
one
like,
thing I did like was when Gojira. I haven't heard many of their songs. I'm gonna check them out a little bit more, but they were doing a pretty good live set, like suspended out on that castle with flames and stuff going on there. That was I like that.
again, I saw Lady Gaga singing a song in French, which like you Paris is a pretty big place. I'm pretty sure there's some musicians from around there that you could have gotten to sing those songs.
And technically,
Um,
wouldn't it be Mademoiselle Gaga in France?
may we? Um, but yeah, I was trying to watch it with my kids, and I'm like, look, girls, like we're gonna wait. The teams are coming out on the boats, and you'll see all the Canada flags coming out when Canada comes up. And the girls are sitting there, and I could tell they started out like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then after about 5 minutes, even they're looking at me like, Dad, what is this? This is so weird. Like they're just coming out on boats.
Yeah. I wasn't
And
a fan of the whole boat process there, right?
no,
Like,
and that's another thing too. Like, imagine you're someone who buys tickets strictly for the opening ceremonies because typically it's like this fireworks show. It's like a choreographed extravaganza that all the world is watching, and
mhm.
then you're watching these boats just drive through with mist around them.
Here comes
Like,
Thomas the tugboat here, bringing in the three Ghanaian athletes. Like, just the range of boat sizes for the different countries
and
was,
even then, they had most of the country sharing boats.
yeah.
So it's like, oh, here's Canada, and they're showing like a Cameroonian flag right next to it. Like that's not Canada.
Yeah. What's going on here? We only got 6 from here. You guys hop in the lifeboats of
like,
this larger
like
vessel.
obviously obviously the French national budget isn't as high as we think it is because yeah, they look like they cheaped out pretty well on that whole show. Maybe saved it for Celine in the fireworks show at
Yeah.
the Eiffel Tower after, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, man. It was strange. I didn't follow the whole thing after Canada was done. I pretty much called it a day because obviously I had to work. But yeah, it was weird. I wasn't into it at all. And then I heard it got even weirder after that too. So I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah.
oh yeah.
Things got different the later the show went on there, but I
I've
mean,
I've
yeah,
heard some people talking about it.
yeah. All I'll kind of say is like, yeah, not my cup of tea. You know, the people that are upset about it because there was too many controversial things that happened. Who cares? Like, are you kidding me? Like the amount of things that are getting churned out on Netflix that your 8-year-old kids are watching, like get more concerned about that than well, this one thing happened for 0.5 seconds on my TV here as part of a international Olympic affair. But anyways, I don't know. I'm very much in agreement with you. The boats, I think we can X-nay boats at future
Yeah,
Olympic events. And yeah, maybe use some paid resources for choreography or something rather
yeah,
than just street performers. A
yeah.
lot of mimes going on in that French opening there.
Whenever France gets their next Olympics in like the next 20 or 30 years, let's say, like you got some time now, folks. Start to do it now, start to develop it, and then blow everybody's hat off whenever the time comes. Because yeah, it looked like you honestly put it together the morning of, and it was a cluster. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. But moving on, a lot of moving parts for an opening ceremony. A lot of moving parts in Blue Jays land.
Speaking of moving parts,
Oh man, in and out. It was one of the busiest Blue Jays trade deadlines on record. So I'm gonna quickly run through who
yeah,
came in and who went out. And you let me know if you're assigning a letter grade based because we've kind of covered this for a few episodes now. What were your big takeaways from it? So out went the good old Yimi Garcia, Nate Pearson, Danny Jansen, Justin Turner, Yusei Kikuchi, Trevor Richards, IKF, and Kevin Kiermaier. And in was Jonathan Clace, Jacob Sharp, Yohendrick Pinango, Josh Rivera, Cutter Coffee, Edinson Paulino, Gilberto Batista, RJ Schreck, Jake Bloss, Joey Loperfida, Will Wagner, Jay Harry, Charles McAdoo, Ryan Yarbrough. So, of all of the ones that came in, almost all of them were exclusively prospects, except for Yarbrough. So, first of all, golf clap to me for minimal butchers of those names.
you know what? And you did better than I thought you were gonna do. But the reason I'm laughing is because the one name that you messed up isn't even an international player. It's Kevin Kiermaier.
Yeah, I was just trying to get through all of them so it didn't so fast that it didn't turn into this.
So
Kyle's
many,
reading names for 4.5 minutes here.
so many vowels.
Oh my god. But yeah, let's maybe start off with this before we get to the actual letter grade here. I'm going to back up a minute.
Yeah.
Was there anyone they didn't move that you were surprised that didn't get traded?
No, I think that they traded everybody who I thought they were going to trade, plus some surprises. right? Like Nate Pearson, who would have thought they would have got anything for him at this point with how terrible he's been this year.
Side note on that, did you see his first appearance?
Yeah, he got tossed in his first appearance because he threw at somebody's head.
Yeah, he got taken like dead straight away to center field, hit someone in the head, and then
Yeah,
got ejected. So eventful first game for him.
it literally sounds like Rick Vaughn before he gets glasses in Major League.
Yeah, Nate Wild Thing Pearson.
Yeah, the one surprise who I thought they were going to hold on to for the next year because they had him under contract was Isaiah Kiner Falefa. I thought that one, we've talked about him before. He's actually had a really good season so far this year, kind of been their most steady player to date, which is why they're in the predicament that they're in. Yeah, but I mean, you can play multiple positions. Obviously, he's not that old. He's only 29. So, not that he's a 35, 36-year-old prospect who maybe has a year or two left. But yeah, I think pretty chalk in regards to who we thought was going to get moved out. And then the returns. I mean, solid, not spectacular, but considering some of the players that they got back for some of the players they traded out, I think it was kind of a wash, right? Because you got a lot of prospects, which is what you needed. Their prospect system was absolutely, piss poor.
Yeah.
They had one of the worst farm clubs in baseball, and they needed to address that. And I think getting a lot of seasoned minor league players was essential for them because now they've got this experience. So then they can slide into a lineup a lot easier, right? I'm thinking about the Houston trade. Like that was probably the best trade that they made with Kikuchi going over to Houston.
100%.
They got 3 prospects who will probably come in and play meaningful time this year, and then seeing where they're at going into the off season. And then you've probably got one of your starting outfielders for next year, and maybe your 3rd or 4th rotational starter for next year. And then who knows what Will Rager's going to become. Like 26-year-old prospect, kind of, bounced around the minor leagues, but
bring dad over, maybe be a little bullpen.
Yeah, sure.
Billy
Why
Wagner.
not?
Yeah,
why not? They've got a tendency to bring in players with all-star Hall of Fame fathers. So keep up with the tradition. But yeah, I mean, you've got some wild cards in there, which I think bodes well because at the end of the day, look, prospects are called prospects for a reason. Yeah. If they were sure things, we'd call them lock, stock, sure things. So, again,
what a sexy name that would be there, right?
Yeah. You'll have to forgive me on some of the names because again, I'm trying to rattle through all of them. But the 3 players who I really am high on, Charles McAdoo, the player they got back for the aforementioned IKF. Again, he's been rocketing up major league scouting bureaus ever since the start of the season. He's showing that he's hitting for power, he's stealing bases, hitting for average. I think he's hitting over 300 with 18 home runs, 18 stolen bases. So that's kind of what you want to see out of your prospects, right? Yeah. Like tearing the ball, tearing the cover.
Players don't grow on trees.
Yeah, tearing the cover off the ball in the minor league system, showing that you can play some defense in the outfield, and ultimately, being kind of that 4 or 5 tool player. Then you've got, again, who's the pitcher that they got from Houston?
Jake Bloss.
Jake Bloss. I want to say Kloss, but yeah, Jake Bloss.
There was Jonathan Clace who could be thrown for a bit of a loop there.
And that is the other one. So I kind of combined the two of them, Jonathan Clace and Jake Bloss. So we'll start with Bloss. He just got called up to Houston, 23 years old, very, very decorated collegiate career at, I think it was Louisiana Lafayette. And then he transferred to Georgetown University, where he was the Big East pitcher of the year last year. Watched some highlights of him last night, and yeah, guy's got like 6 pitches in his arsenal. Looks like the real deal, and could become that 4th or 5th guy for them next year, and become maybe that future top 2 starter that they're looking for. So I think getting a guy like that for Kikuchi, who is ultimately on an expiring contract and probably you're going to lose for nothing in the offseason, that's a pretty big win in itself, let alone getting the other 2 guys that you get in, right? And then, mentioned Jonathan Clace, who they got for Yimi Garcia. This guy stole 79 bases in the minor leagues. And anyone who's not familiar with how many stolen bases the league leader currently has, not even close to that. I think Ellie De La Cruz is at 48.
Yeah,
So
55, I think was
it's
what I
55 now.
last saw him, but still,
Yeah.
yeah,
Still, and this is over 90 games, I believe. So he's almost at a steal a game. And by all intents and purposes, he's 21. Every level he's been at, the guy is swiping bags left, right, and center. And he's actually shown some pop because he's had a 20 homer season in the minors already as well. So I think you've got some good pieces to build around, some good infield prospects, some good outfield prospects, and again, the pitching prospect with Bloss. So again, overall, I think the return is more meant for depth in your system to rebuild that pipeline that you ultimately lost when you made all those moves back in 2014 and 15. And then you had these poor drafts with this, Shapiro and Atkins era. So that just kind of sullies it a little bit because they're still the ones making the decisions on evaluating talent, where they haven't shown a tendency to do that up to this point. So that's my 2 cents on what they got, and then we can kind of get into letter grades after. But what did you think of their return and who was going out?
yeah. I mean, there was no one that got shipped out that I was like, oh my god, I can't believe they moved him. Right, like the playbook on what they were kind of trying to do was leaked well in advance of the trade deadline, right?
Yeah,
Well, unless we are absolutely blown away with an offer for someone like a Bichette or a Guerrero or something.
blown, George, blown.
Blown away. Uh, yeah, maybe they could have swung a Steinbrenner deal back in the day, but uh, like we knew that that was probably going to be people who weren't under team control for the next couple seasons that were ultimately going to get shipped out,
Yeah,
right? So the people that went out, they are again good pieces, but there was no one that got dealt that it's like, ugh, hard to find one of them on the free agent market next year, right?
yeah,
And even with some of the deals that they ended up making today, like the Yarbrough deal there, like there were some weird financial maneuverings that were kind of going on where cash was a large sum of cash got involved with it, which I think the purpose was it barely dropped them under the luxury tax threshold, which then frees them up for future seasons to go. So like that gives them even more financial flexibility to go out and sign kind of these people that can replace the
yeah,
players that we mentioned that already moved out, right? Exactly what you said in terms of the returns that came in. Like we've talked about it on this show. Other than Tiedemann and Martinez, who's still sitting out his suspension, like there was no one on those farm teams that anyone was really all that excited about. To the point where I think they just re-ranked the Blue Jays farm system post trade deadline, and all three Astros pieces that came back are suddenly top 20 prospects for the Blue Jays, right?
yeah,
So it goes to show you like how bare those cupboards had kind of gotten. And I think the major takeaway here is that this team still feels like this core and at least their front three starters are good enough to keep them frisky, right? Obviously, things
mm,
did not pan out how they hoped they would this year, but maybe that's a lesson learned for how they approach this upcoming offseason, right? Maybe it's not put all your eggs into one big megastar basket here. Maybe plant a few of them around and see if you
yeah,
can work around the fringes, or do something that you actually have control over and make an off-season trade, right? Bring someone in rather than, all right, we're gonna, bat our eyelashes at them at the bar and hope that you go home with them at the end of the night. So it's very telling to what the future kind of holds for this team. But if you're a Blue Jays fan, based on how this season has gone, based on you know the talk radio, the fan call-ins, the exposés, the blogs, the just even social media posts that fans are making, you can't really feel that great about it because the aforementioned front office kind of came out smelling like roses to a degree here, because by and large, right, especially that Astros deal, they moved out a lot of dead weight's the wrong word, but non irreplaceable pieces and restocked their farm system in a big way. So
Yeah.
does this ultimately buy Atkins and company a longer leash? And now we're just going to wash, rinse, repeat. And oh, okay, I've seen this movie. It's just Vladdy, Bichette, three starting pitchers. And now we're just, kind of swapping out the supporting actors around them and hoping for different results. So you can't feel 100% great about that, which is where I think kind of the letter grade ultimately suffers. But in terms of
Yeah.
the actual baseball moves they made, there's not too many of them out there that I can really fault.
Yeah.
Like we've said, those pieces, they are probably going to either get let walk or, they would maybe get flipped in the off season or something after signing a kind of that 1 year deal a la Justin Turner. We'll bring him in knowing that we were probably going to move on from him unless we were in the thick of a playoff race anyways.
Yeah. No, 100%. And that's exactly kind of where my letter grade was going to go and be affected, was because one, the return, although unspectacular, you did what you had to do to get pieces back for expiring contracts. That's kind of, what savvy general managers do in all sport. You know that someone's walking out the door. Instead of holding on for dear life and hoping that they come back for 1 year, or you can make a push for one last run at a championship, you're realistic about things. You get something back before they walk out for free. So, all in all, I think that you can't fault what the front office did. It's just how they got to this point. That's what you can fault them for,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's what I mentioned before. Like, you guys obviously didn't know how to evaluate talent very well, because we wouldn't be in this position if you did. And the fact that you've got your top two prospects, one of which just had Tommy John surgery, the second of which got suspended for 60 games for using performance enhancing drugs. And you're
Don't sell him short. He got a full 80 game suspension there, Kyle.
80 games, 80 games. Sorry. 80 game suspension for PEDs.
If you're going to get popped for PEDs, you get the full run of 80 games here, buddy.
I thought it was the exchange rate with Canada and the US. I thought it was the exchange rate.
My mistake.
But and then another one of your top prospects, Owen Barrera, he just came off of Tommy John surgery. So even with the top prospects that everyone is very high on, are we going to get these guys back to a position of being these dominant, projected players in the MLB when two of your top pitching prospects have literally had, career-ending surgeries for some pitchers to their arms already, and they're only in their early 20s? And then you've got another guy who, if he was on for performance-enhancing drugs, like, a lot of people assume he was, is he coming back clean while not being able to hit the ball as well as he was before, right? So if I had to give them a letter grade, I'd probably give them a C plus, because again, you did what you had to do. You restocked the cupboards. You've got some good, solid pipelines now with older prospects who are going to keep all three of your top levels solid, which is AA, AAA, and your major league ball club. I want to give them a higher grade, but I can't, because we talked about it with potential targets for the Toronto Blue Jays and who could reinvigorate their lineup. And lo and behold, Mr. Jazz Chisholm got traded to the New York Yankees. He's now hit his fourth home run in his first 3 games with New York. So I don't want to say that we know what we're talking about on this show, but we know what we're talking about on this show. So if they had gone out and gotten Jazz for ultimately nothing, yeah, no, not even a pennant, but I would have been able to say, you know what, that's a good step in the right direction. The guy's in his mid-20s. He's obviously a very talented player who maybe some people misconstrued as being overrated. But again, the Yankees didn't have to pay out the nose to get him, and look what he's doing for them already. So you get a guy like that in there, you could bump it up to maybe a B plus, but I think a C plus is pretty good considering where the front office has kind of lingered over the last 7 years.
Yeah. And that was where I was going to land with them exactly, right? Like not to just ride your coattails here, but like that we've kind of hit on all the points here, right? Like
yeah.
you can't give them full marks because this is the mess that they ultimately made themselves, right? There's also the fact that, you've essentially just really waved the white flag on this season.
Yep.
I don't think there were very many fans kind of holding out hope that, oh, let's add and we can still turn it around.
They're
But
only 8 games out.
right, but like the blueprint was, guess what, these are all prospects, right? They didn't add any MLB ready, like plug and play, you're ready to just ride out the rest of the season and be our day one, chiseled in stone starter here for next season. So there's going to be a lot of moving parts there. But what's pretty interesting is the season ticket renewal threshold just came up for the Toronto Blue Jays. And have some friends who have connections to that sales department, and historical low renewal rates were essentially the theme coming out of that. So that kind of shows you where this fan base is at. Now, keep in mind that historically, this is a fan base that doesn't really pay attention to the team unless they're in the thick of a playoff
Yeah.
already. So the fact that even the ones that are kind of those diehards that are going to go there for 81 home games a season are pretty much pulling the plug and saying, well, maybe when these prospects are ready, then I'll renew my seats again. But for now,
Yeah.
I'm out. It's not a great spot to be in. Now, thankfully, you're owned by a telecom giant, and you're actually, if you look at Rogers as a quote unquote owner, right? They would be
Okay.
one of the top five, wealthiest owners in all of, Major League Baseball. So
Yeah.
they're not worrying on that front. But if this was a smaller market team and you just dumped all that money into all these multiple phases of renovations into the stadium, and this front office did this, and that resulted in this mass dump of season ticket renewals, like there would be heads rolling in
Hmm.
terms of executives getting fired out of there. But because it's a deep pocketed organization, right? Because, Atkins and Shapiro, they've kind of got their tentacles in some of those renovation aspects of the stadium as well, which by and large have gone over well. And they kind of have this, passable trade deadline. You're probably getting the same product out there again next season, which is Atkins and Shapiro are probably still calling the shots.
Yeah.
They might float out the narrative that, oh, they're under the microscope, they need to perform, and kind of those sports talk, regular things that just get thrown out there. But are they actually going to follow up on anything? I don't know.
Yeah.
Until I kind of see it, I think it's same old Blue Jays at this point.
It's hard for anyone to really think that they wouldn't be back based on the fact that they were given the green light to make these moves,
Right.
right? I think if they weren't really, expected to be back, I don't think ownership would have signed off on them making all of these very impactful moves. Especially, and again, we're looking at the Red Sox in the background of your screen. I mean, trading away a guy like Danny Jansen, that has an impact on the community, right? It's not just the ball club, it's the community. And you don't get to make that move if you're not expected to come back the following year to, right the wrong that is, what you've done to, to your system, right? So unfortunately, I think we're in that position right now. But again, stranger things have happened. We'll see what happens. But yeah, like I
But
said,
fun fact about Danny Jansen,
I
where
know I saw this the other day, but yeah, go ahead.
but that game between the Jays and the Red Sox that was ultimately weather delayed, it's going to
Yeah.
be made up later. So if Jansen actually suits up for the Red Sox, could be the first player in MLB history to, on the score sheet, suit up
Yeah.
and take part for both teams in the same major league game. So
Yeah.
a fun little bit of trivia there that could ultimately get played out here.
And if Boston sits him for that game, I mean, it's not right. I mean, you got to start him for that game. Even if he only plays one inning, get him out there.
Yeah. All right. He'll go out there. He'll pinch hit for someone or something like that. There,
Mm-hmm.
Alex Cora knows what he's doing there. But brings up our final kind of little topic on the Blue Jays there. Just yay or nay? Schneider coming back next year?
I mean,
I don't need a full dissertation here.
I know.
You know.
I want it to be nay, but I think it's yay.
Oh, ever the optimist. I'll take the pessimistic stance. I think
Okay.
I think honestly how things are lining up, he's going to be the fall guy, right? And you're going to see that front office come back, but this is the small kind of hat tip to, oh, fans, we're paying attention, right? Like, you guys are demanding some change, so in comes so and so, Schneider's out, right? But it's still the same people behind the scenes pulling all the strings. It's just a different puppet out there.
Yeah, I mean, what's Terry Francona doing these days?
Probably sitting on a beach somewhere.
I mean, Toronto's got some beaches. They're not as warm as some of the ones that you're sitting on, but
Lake
they...
Ontario, the sunny confines.
Just saying. But yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I want it to be Nay, so I mean, I hope that they look at the entire body of work that not only the manager has done, but the general manager has done. So that way you can say, okay, I realize that Shapiro brought in Atkins to groom him to become the general manager, who then brought in Schneider to groom him to become the coach. All three of you guys have to wear this in some capacity. And whether that's Shapiro takes a step back from baseball decisions and then Atkins is kind of left on his own and has no protection, I think that's what needs to happen. But yeah, you're probably right. I think Schneider is the fall guy in this whole situation, which, I mean, whether you like the guy or not, obviously is very much underwhelmed in his first foray into Major League managing.
Well, I'm going to just tee up this final topic here for you and then cede my time on the floor for your very well thought out, level-headed, non-biased take on the matter. You guys have had a busy offseason in Edmonton, and you've done a lot of good things, a lot of good player signings, a lot of trades, acquisitions, re-signings, extensions, all sorts of fun stuff. And you guys went, you know what? We've built up a lot of good faith in this community here. We're Canada's team right now. You know what? We can maybe sneak one under the radar here. Stan Bowman coming in from the Chicago Blackhawks out of exile, the first of the three Blackhawks kind of executives to be landing on his feet. All are reinstated at this point on paper, but first one to be back with the club. What is your take on them kind of naming him to be that next face of the franchise in the C-suite level there?
Yeah, I mean, even when you take out all of the off ice performance related matters, you look at kind of where Chicago was near the end of Stan Bowman's tenure, and it's not like they were really doing a whole lot after they went on their early 2010s cup runs, right? They kind of had fallen by the wayside of being a middling team where, once you don't have the luxury of picking in the top 5 every year and building up that cupboard of talent, now you can really cut your teeth to say, okay, this is where we make our medal as a general manager, finding these late round prospects, these sleepers, and then ultimately piecing together this core team and keeping people in town. I mean, it's kind of reminiscent of the Peter Chiarelli, situation when he was coming off of a cup in Boston. I think a lot of the decision went into obviously what he was able to help build with Dale Talon in the late 2000s, because that's when you got the Jonathan Taves, the Patrick Kanes, the Duncan Keiths. Like, you built up that core, but let's not fool ourselves here by saying that Stan Bowman was the architect behind this whole franchise. He wasn't. Dale Talon. So now we'll go over to the other side of things, which kind of is mind-boggling to me. Why you would make this kind of decision now. And you kind of hit the nail on the head with, look, they're doing a hell of a job this offseason, right? Obviously, Kenny Holland, moved on, did a great job at the helm of Edmonton, dug them out of a huge hole that the aforementioned Peter Chiarelli had kind of put them in, and kind of left the keys on the counter to the Ferrari and said, hey, guys, just don't crash it. And you look at what Jeff Jackson, who is the vice president of the team, and what the three people who were ultimately making the decisions underneath, which again, if you know who they were, Ken Holland's son, Brett Gretzky, and then a little fella by the name of Wayne Gretzky, who is a consultant, who is actually, giving advice and all that kind of stuff on the side as well. So, you're in pretty good hands, right? And obviously, you've built up a lot of,
Highest scoring brother duo of all time in NHL history.
But again, you've built up a lot of credibility, not only within the Edmonton market, but within the NHL market. So they were in a good spot. And the fact that they went out and brought in a guy like Stan Bowman, given all of the things that had happened under his watch, again, are you that tone deaf to where things are in the sports world, not just the professional sports world, in the sports world, with how many predatory events we've witnessed over the last 20 years? This is one of the worst things that's ever happened in NHL history outside of, the actual on ice product. And basically what it came down to was, oh, well, we talked with Kyle Beach beforehand. I called him and I spoke to him briefly before it. What does that mean? Oh, all is forgiven. Yeah, I called him. I gave him a phone call. It was a courtesy call just to let him know that I got a new job, and all is forgotten on my end. I'm going to be making my millions of dollars again to do something that ultimately I shouldn't be allowed to do anymore, given the fact that I allowed what happened to you happen on my watch and did nothing about it. And in fact, you gave him, this offender references to do this type of thing again at other levels. So without even being an Edmonton fan, it's kind of disgraceful that you bring in Stan Bowman to really run a hockey club again. You see all these people who get one chance and all they do is struggle with the opportunity, or they're just not given, a long leash when it comes to performance. And they're let go and they never get another chance again. But they've done nothing wrong. They're good people. They work hard. They bide their time. They pay their dues. And then you see this happen. And what type of hope does that give somebody else who's trying to work their way up and get into that position of becoming the general manager of any type of sports franchise? And you could say, I can't even make one mistake leading up to this, and I'm not even going to be considered. This guy oversees one of the biggest cover-ups in NHL history and now gets the keys to the Stanley Cup favorite leading into the 2025 season. So I hope that was as politically correct as you were hoping, because there's a lot of me that really wants to just, lose my marbles here. But being on, the executive side, for as long as I was, kind of seeing how things work behind the scenes and knowing how these decisions get made, it's even more infuriating. Mm-hmm. Because again, you see good people get opportunities and then not and lose them for no fault of their own and never get another chance. And this happens, and this guy gets a better opportunity than the one that he left. So I don't like it. I hate it. I really hope that, for Edmonton's sake, they can, look at this scenario as, okay, well, hopefully we can provide a rehabilitating scenario like we did with some, former players who got into some hot water we took chances on, like Corey Perry, Vander Kane, yada, yada, yada. But what they did was not nearly at the level of what the aforementioned Stan Bowman was ultimately in charge of. So that's my 2 cents on the matter.
Got room on the Sens bandwagon for you over here if you want to switch allegiances. But yeah. I mean, yeah, you said it well, right? It's been well documented. You or I aren't going to summarize things any better than, a Rick Westhead or anything like that, who has spent, countless years of his life kind of documenting what ended up happening here and ultimately helping to bring it to light. So people can go and check that out if they want any context on the actual story. In terms of the actual hire, It comes down to the simple fact that, guess what? There are 32 of these positions in the world. 32 positions that you can say, I am a GM of an NHL franchise. Putting aside what happened for a moment, and I'll circle back to that, why do we keep recycling the same 40 to 45 names for these 32 positions rather than giving some of these people who have been 30 years at a college and have, hundreds, if not thousands of players who are inviting them to their weddings decades after and this, that, and the other, making all of these huge impacts on their lives, right? Lifers of the game that would absolutely, you know, throw themselves in front of a bus to get an opportunity like this. But we're gonna, so and so's buddies because they used to play together way back in the 80s or whatever, or there's some weird behind the scenes connection that we just keep bringing back the same people.
Or you're Scotty Bowman's kid and have rode your dad's coattails for your entire career.
You were born on third base, right? You don't know any university head coaches there down in the NCAA that have ever been accused of that there, eh, Mr. Michigan fan?
Nope,
But
none whatsoever.
none whatsoever. I digress once again. But coming back to what actually happened, right? Like, we don't need to go into details, but there are people who do deserve second chances, right? A heat of the moment thing, a dumb decision. Oh my God, as soon as it happened, I realized I shouldn't have done that. Like, please let me fall on my sword. It was a mistake. This was an intentional cover up. And that wasn't just let's cover it up once. It was,
For
let's cover it up
years.
again and again and again and again. And
Yeah.
right. So I have absolutely no time of the day. I'm not going to try and sit here on my soapbox and say I've never made mistakes, but I don't continually get handed, like you say, keys to the Ferrari as a result of every time I make a mistake that I'm going to fail upwards in my career here.
And your mistakes aren't making people, think about committing suicide, right? Your failures aren't affecting people for generations.
Yeah.
Right. So, anyways, go on.
Yeah. So, all in all, I think we've kind of set our piece here, right? We don't need to beat a dead horse to death. And I think there's a lot of Edmonton fans who feel the exact same way, right? There's already a few movements that I've seen where, for reasons different than the Blue Jays not renewing season tickets, there's a lot of Oilers fans who, again, like you said, coming off a Game 7 Cup final loss, you're returning an even stronger team on paper next year. You're the Cup favorites. You've got the best player in the world, undoubtedly, on your roster. And nope, that's a bridge too far for me. So, do I expect anything to change? Absolutely not. Right? It's hockey. It's one of the most archaic sports in terms of digging their heels in, and this is the way it's always been done. And hey, it's an old boys club, and right, you've got the commissioner of the league who refuses to even acknowledge that CTE is a thing. Like, these are the people that are in positions of power here, and this is how you ultimately end up with a product like that. But
yeah,
not a fan of the hire. Again, I'll give him a second chance, but that second chance in life does not need to be as a GM of an NHL franchise.
No. And look, you made a lot of money in your lifetime. You obviously have a family that made a lot of money. It's not like you're desperate to get a job, right? And at the end of the day, you make a mistake, you shouldn't be falling upwards.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So, I mean, yeah, this wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate, cover up. And yeah, here we are. But this, again, it just, there's a lot of things that I'm very tolerant of. There's a lot of things that you're very tolerant of. There's a lot of things that everyone are very tolerant of. This is just not one of them. Like, we can't be tolerant of something like this and just say, well, he's a good guy, like, he's a good guy. It's just a situation that
sat in his mansion for 2 years now, and he learned
like
his lesson.
no one's playing a violin for Stan Bowman because he's not, the general manager of a hockey club. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, at the end of the day, yeah, it's frustrating, given the fact that again, regardless of what they've done to, create goodwill in the community prior to this point. Yeah, very short-sighted. It's disappointing. And again, even if he were the second coming of Glenn Sather, doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. But we'll turn things around to end off on a positive note.
Stan Bowman seems like the guy who would authorize drones to go and film other people's practice.
Yeah,
there, I think.
yeah, and then cover it up to say that they didn't have drones filming anything.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, to turn things on a more positive note to end off. Kyle and I would just like to issue a "We told you so."
Another submission in the "We told you so" department.
Yeah, another submission in the "We told you so" department, because there's a little situation that's been playing out in the CFL with the Edmonton Elks, which again we talked about, I think, in episode 7, regarding Tre Ford and McLeod Bethel Thompson. Well, we all know that the Edmonton Elks have started the season winless yet again. And I know, shocking revelation. The high-priced quarterback that the guru Chris Jones thought was going to resurrect this franchise, McLeod Bethel Thompson, came back on a 1-year deal, has largely struggled in his return to the CFL, has not been able to regain his glory from his Toronto days. And now we're seeing Mr. Tre Ford getting more playing time. And again, shocking revelation. He came in, he threw 3 touchdowns in less than a half, and ultimately almost got them to come from behind from almost 30 points with Hamilton. Mm-hmm. So they've also come out now and said that Tre Ford will be starting this coming week against Saskatchewan, who, if you haven't seen Saskatchewan's defense, this year, that's going to be a buckle up your chin strap type of game. But we called it. We said that Tre Ford deserves an opportunity to be the starter of the Edmonton Elks. Obviously, no one in the Edmonton front office took that to heed. And yeah, once again, he showed that the moment's not too big for him. The league is not too good for him. He is a player. When you give a player an opportunity, he will make plays. So let's go, Tre, and don't let your foot off the gas and show everyone why we're so smart on the 1867 Sports Show, because we believe in talents like you.